all you have to do is keep your eyes on the monitor.
Welcome to Freddy Fazbear's, where fantasy and fun come to life.
Okay.
2023, for the most part, has been an excellent year for film. It's been an even better year for video game adaptations. The year got off to a great start with HBO's The Last of Us, and the Super Mario Bros. Movie was only recently dethroned by Barbie as the highest grossing film of the year. And Gran Turismo turned out okay as well. Now, the focus shifts to Five Nights at Freddy's. Emma Tammi, the director behind the excellent supernatural western The Wind, has courageously said yes to an almost impossible task: turn a video game that has barely any story to it, but plenty of lore, into a cohesive film. She gets extra points if she can make it under 2 hours too. For those unfamiliar with the video game franchise, here are the basics. You play as a security guard who must survive 5 overnight shifts from 12 AM to 6 AM at an abandoned pizzeria where haunted animatronic characters wander at night and try to kill you. You can only defend yourself by looking at the cameras, closing doors, and turning on lights. The games are popular for a reason. They're devilishly simple, but I've seen grown men cry from terror while playing them. In the film, Josh Hutcherson plays Mike, the latest hapless security guard for Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria. Mike is fighting tooth and nail for this job. He needs it to keep custody of his young sister Abby. Mike is also weighed down by his little brother's traumatic disappearance years ago. So when the supposedly haunted animatronics at Freddy's come to life, Mike is having a hard time dealing with it all. That being said, I don't have any notable childhood trauma, and I too would be soiling myself if haunted animatronics were hunting me every night. Five Nights at Freddy's begins with a sequence that is somehow better than the rest of the film. It hints at a better, more brutal movie. On one hand, Tammi had to work with a PG-13 age rating, which is a 15 in the UK, one that prohibits her from committing to a properly gory adaptation of the game. On the other hand, Five Nights at Freddy's gets away with just enough to be a compelling gateway horror film for younger audiences, although the 2015 Goosebumps movie is a far better way in. For a younger viewer, it might just be scary enough without being traumatizing. For anyone over the age of 15 though, Five Nights at Freddy's will most likely prove to be painfully dull. To Tammi's credit, there are a few instances where she creatively works around the low rating to give the impression of hardcore violence. In a particularly impressive scene, a character gets bitten in half in silhouette, which, while completely blood-free, is still pretty gnarly. If Five Nights at Freddy's had come out when I was 14, I may have been a huge fan, and it would have pushed me to seek out more horror films of the same nature. But I'm not, and it didn't. What we end up with is a movie whose story is far too convoluted and superficial to leave any lasting impression. Hutcherson is a forgettable lead, and his performance isn't helped by a shallow script that confuses heavy backstory for emotional depth. While Matthew Lillard is always a welcome addition to any film, Elizabeth Lale is helplessly underserved by a thinly written character. It's worth mentioning that someone already tried to make a horror film with almost exactly the same premise. Kevin Lewis's Willy's Wonderland premiered in 2021, and in that film, Nicolas Cage's janitor is also pitted against demonic, murderous animatronics that come to life. It's a feather in Five Nights at Freddy's cap that at least it's marginally better. Still, Five Nights at Freddy's continues what's been a disappointing streak of horror films in what has been otherwise a stellar year for films. It's an uninspired adaptation, afraid to break free from source material, but also unable to translate what makes the game compelling and make it into cinematic form. Bottom line, should the movie appear on one of the security monitors in the game itself, I'd simply be inclined to switch said monitor off.